let's look at the new report by PCHR. So PCHR, a very well-known Palestinian advocacy group, Palestinian Centre for Human Rights, recently released this report called Voices of the Genocide, a report on Israel's ongoing genocide on the Gaza Strip. And like I said at the beginning, the main thing about this report, and again, I'm doing this because like there's this tendency. I hear a lot of people telling me I don't have time to read these reports. I don't have time to read these reports, and I get it. So maybe if I read it, you can listen to me while you're doing the dishes. Right? So, but the big thing about this report is this here: Voices from Gaza. This report is the only one so far that has actual testimony from Gaza. So I wanted to read that section. I wanted to read some of the voices from Gaza, because I think it's very important, and then look into some of the patterns of the genocide that they have identified. And then look at their argument on intent. Hopefully we can do that in like 30 minutes, and then we can move on to the Gaza Riviera one. So let's look at page 23 and pages 184 and 197. So 23. So Voices from Gaza. So I think this is very important because we are so secluded from what's going on in Gaza, even though we have so much information, but we don't have many Palestinians telling the story, and the Palestinians that are telling the story are being executed by Israel, like the journalists, right? So this is an incredible contribution from this report. I'm so happy that they did this. So let's start. Let's read the testimonies. Okay, this is Iman Taisir Awad Gabun. Please let me know if I'm butchering the names. I don't know Hebrew and I also don't know Arabic. Shared with PCHR how her life has been shattered by the war. Following the arrest and torture of her husband by Israeli forces, she endured relentless bombardment, the destruction of her home, and the deaths of her children, mother, and other relatives. Actually, can you read this? This is not big enough. Is it? That's better. Is it better? Okay. Oh, sorry. So she says, I am married to Ibrahim Jamil Asi Gaboon, who was released from Israeli prison on 4 November 2023 via the Karim Shalom crossing in Rafah, south of the Gaza Strip, after being arrested by the IOF from his workplace in Rahat, Israel, on 19 October 2023. Noting that he had a work permit. While in Israeli prison, my husband suffered torment of detention, torture, and insults. I have 3 children, Jamil, 12, Majd, 8, and Amir, 4, and gave birth to a beautiful baby girl whom I named Rama, but she died when I delivered her. I lived at my in-laws' 4-story house, which was later leveled to the ground after being bombed by the IOF. We have been forcibly displaced several times. Following the end of the humanitarian pause on 1st December 2023, the IOF heavily fired tear gas canisters and indiscriminate shells in the area, forcing us to leave and seek refuge in my aunt's house near Kamal Adwan Hospital in Beit Lahia housing project. A few days later, the 4-story house of our relatives, the Asaf family, located opposite my aunt's house, was bombed and completely destroyed. Look at what this person is going through, just one story. The targeted house was crammed with many displaced women, children, and men. About 36 people were killed in that bombing, 36 people, including my relatives, my aunts, and my mother-in-law. Also, my 3 children sustained various injuries all over their bodies. On 3 December 2023, the IOF surrounded Kamal Adwan Hospital, and we remained trapped there for 15 days. We slept on the floor without blankets or mattresses, and there was no food or water in the hospital, which was overcrowded with displaced people. When we were trapped in Kamal Adwan Hospital, I was trying to find treatment for my son, Majd, who suffers from a rare liver-inborne disease. Majd had been receiving treatment at an Israeli hospital since his birth, and his medications, which were unavailable in the Gaza Strip, were provided by the hospital. As hunger and siege intensified, Majd's health began to deteriorate due to malnutrition and lack of treatment. Oh, but of course, Israel would say that he has a pre-existing condition, so really there is no malnutrition. So this mother is lying about the health conditions of her son, apparently, right? Because that's the level of dehumanization that we're in. That's the level of brutality of this genocide. After 15 days of being trapped inside of the hospital, the IOF ordered all the men to leave, while women and children were left behind in the hospital without food or water for 3 days. After we were forced to leave, my children and I went to my family in Jabalia refugee camp. Upon arriving there, I was informed that the IOF had killed my brother Ibrahim after ordering all the men to leave the school. They shot him in his back, killing him immediately. Additionally, my other brother, Mohammed, was arrested by the IOF. We stayed at Al-Fuqa school for about 35 days, enduring a severe shortage of food and water, as well as the overcrowding of displaced people. Fear and worry engulfed me as I was seeing my sick son march to deteriorating health. We left the school in mid-January 2024 and sought refuge in Al-Kuwait school near the Indonesian hospital. While at school, famine started spreading with only scarce food, water, and flour available amid the high prices of commodities, if they were even available. I started feeling exhausted and ill due to the lack of food, especially since I was 8 months pregnant. Like, I'm sorry. This is a pregnant woman taking care of 3 children, being continuously displaced from one place to the other while she loses family members, like husbands and brothers, and and has to go from house to house because each house that takes her is bombed. This is like when you look, it's one thing to look at a genocide from a bird's eye view and say, oh, there was this bomb and then there was this bomb and there was this bomb. But when you can weave together all of these stories, it becomes truly awful. You can see the horrendousness of this genocide. So I started feeling exhausted and ill due to the lack of food, especially since I was 8 months pregnant. My children also showed signs of fatigue and paleness due to malnutrition, while my son March lost more than 5 kilograms. As March requires proper nutrition and glucose solutions, which were not available, I decided to go to the southern Gaza Strip to save myself and my children from the famine and poverty striking in the northern Gaza Strip. The next morning, I took my children and headed to Al-Rashid Street to cross the military checkpoints established there. It was noon when we reached Al-Nabulsi roundabout near the checkpoint, along with thousands of displaced people like us fleeing for their lives. We found ourselves surrounded by Israeli tanks, which directly fired an artillery shell at us, wounding me and my children. I lost consciousness and woke up 3 days later in bed at Al-Shifa Medical Complex. 3 days when this pregnant woman was unconscious and not taking care of her children. Like, I couldn't move my body at all, and the doctors informed me that after the shelling, displaced people had rescued me and my son Jamil and brought us to the complex. Just Jamil? What happened to Maj and forgot the name of the other child? More than 50 people were killed in the incident. Some were waiting for aid trucks to feed their starving children and families, while others were trying to cross to the south. After I woke up, I was told that my sons Maj and Amir were killed. Oh my god. See, guys, I haven't read this before, okay? Like, this is my live reaction. And their bodies were torn into pieces. I also learned that, I'm gonna cry. I also learned that I sustained severe fractures on my left foot and needed a bone graft. Additionally, my left hand's joint was completely smashed and I needed a full joint replacement. I also sustained severe burns in my face. Oh my god. Which caused me to lose hearing after my left ear was completely severed. I now need a cochlear implant. Later, I obtained a medical referral for treatment abroad. On 28 February 2024, I began to feel labor pains. Oh my god, can this woman catch a break? Like, we started searching for a doctor to help me with delivery. However, we could not find a single gynecologist nor any medications or medical supplies at the hospital. Some nurses who were not specialized in obstetrics assisted me in delivering my daughter Rama, who was born dead due to the severe bleeding and injuries I sustained from the bombing. I remained in the hospital for treatment until 19 March 2024, when we were surprised with the IOF besieging the hospital and Israeli tanks advancing under fire from warplanes and quadcopters, targeting anyone moving in the hospital's vicinity. We were completely trapped without food, water, or electricity. The following day, the IOF ordered patients' companions to evacuate the hospital and head southwards. My mother, Eatedal Gabun, 62, was forced to evacuate and leave me behind. Oh my god! My brothers later informed me she went to her relative's house in Tel Al Hawa near the Red Cross headquarters of the IOF, besieging them in Tel Al Hawa. The IOF besieged them in Tel Al Hawa and ordered them to evacuate. However, my mother was unable to move, so the IOF shot her, killing her instantly. This is a nightmare. This story is a nightmare. This would be like the worst genocide movie, the most graphic genocide movie ever, and it's an actual testimony from someone that actually lived through this. I was left alone, unable to move during the siege on the hospital. We were around 100 patients, unable to move in the building, and the IOF ordered nurses to move us from one place to another and shot some of them dead. The number of patients decreased day by day as they died due to the critical injuries and inflammations amid lack of treatment and after being intentionally killed by the IOF. Also, our injuries got infected with worms coming out of our hand and leg injuries with no medical care. For 14 days, we spent all that time without even a sip of water or food. We then began screaming and calling for water and food, and they brought us only a little. The IOF also constantly threatened to kill us. We remained in that situation until the IOF withdrawal after 14 days. Imagine you're in a hospital trying to recover after 2 of your kids died, your brother died, your husband died, your mother died, and some asshole soldier says, "Oh, we're gonna kill you too." Like, go to hell. Afterwards, I called my brother who came and took me from Al Shifa Hospital to be then referred to Al Mamadani Hospital, staying there only for less than an hour as doctors informed me that my treatment was not available. On 17 April 2024, my brother took me along with the remaining members of my family and headed to the south. I crossed the checkpoints on a worn-out wheelchair. We immediately went to the European hospital where I underwent surgery to place an external fixation device on my injured leg. Doctors informed me that it was a preventive procedure until I could travel for treatment abroad. They also informed me that I wasn't referred abroad soon. If I wasn't referred abroad soon, my leg might need to be amputated. Guys, like, what the hell? Like, how are we allowing this to happen? Like, how are people defending this? Honestly, how are people defending this? This is one of the hardest things I've like. I read a lot of like horrible things for my research. Because I researched the history of colonialism. Um, this is one of the worst things I've read. Um, it's comparable to I once read the journal of a Herero, actually no, a Nama um, leader talking about the genocide of his people. It's comparable to that. Okay, shall we read another one? Jawad Abu Nasser shared with PCHR his experience during the genocide. He explained how he was. At this point, I think we're not even going to read the legal parts because this is more important. He explained how he was repeatedly forced to evacuate and how he lost 129 members of his family in a single airstrike on his home without warning, despite previous attempts to evacuate. Uh, he says, with the beginning of the Israeli war on the Gaza Strip on 7 October 2023, my family and I evacuated our residential building and took refuge in the Abu Nasser family building in the Beit Lahia housing project. My family and I remained in the building until December 2023. Due to the extremely dangerous security situation in the area, all the residents of the building decided to seek refuge in the Jabalia schools for boys in the Jabalia market area. We left the building in the midst of intense bombing and indiscriminate shelling of our area and its surroundings. During this period, from the day after the end of the humanitarian pause until the end of December, we endured the worst times due to the intense bombardment throughout the northern Gaza Strip and the IOF's ground invasion into new areas, including the Jabalia refugee camp and the Beit Lahia housing project. During my stay in the school, I was bombed almost every day. I remember that just a few days after we arrived on 4 December, about 15 people were killed when the school was sporadically targeted by drone missiles for days. This ended with IOF besieging and raiding the school. As a result, I was forced to flee with all my family members just before the IOF stormed in. They left under intense bombardment, indiscriminate shelling, and the relentless and unprecedented hovering sounds of quadcopters everywhere. The quadcopters are the ones that like release grenades on people. We went to the west of Gaza City. A few days later, I was reunited with my family members who had been separated when we fled the school. At first, I thought they had died because of the dangerous situation at the time. In mid-December 2023, we took refuge in a school. I do not remember its name, but it was used as a shelter in Al Rimal neighborhood west of Gaza City. However, in January 2024, we decided to return to the Beit Lahia housing project due to fears of a possible IOF invasion of western Gaza City. Just to get you in context, right? Yes, the first story was horrible, horrendous because of all the people that kept dying. In this second story, I know we're gonna get to 129 people dying, but in this story, this person has had to go from one place to the other, and it's easy for me to say, "Oh, I was here, and then I was there, and then I was there," but every single decision to move to somewhere else is a traumatic decision of what am I gonna do? What am I gonna eat? Where am I gonna stay? Where am I gonna sleep at night? Every single day is it's anguish. In March 2024, the IOF issued new evacuation orders for some areas in northern Gaza, ordering residents to move to western Gaza City. Beit Lahi housing project was one of the areas to be evacuated, so my family and I returned to our neighborhood in Al Shalatin Al Atatra area, west of the Gaza Strip. However, our house was razed to the ground, and we had no choice but to seek refuge in the Abu Jafar school in the Al Atatra neighborhood. See, this is like the IDF demolishing homes so that people cannot return to them. After their withdrawal from the northern Gaza Strip in mid-April, the retreating Israeli military vehicles advanced towards us in the northwestern and northeastern areas of Gaza, where the Abu Jafar school was located. At that moment, we feared an IOF invasion, especially when they had bombed a classroom inside the school, killing 5 people and injuring others. Most of the wounded suffered amputations. After the attack, we were forced to evacuate the school and return to the Abu Nasser family building, where we stayed until the massacre of my family. During our presence in the Abu Nasser house, which housed about 200 of my relatives, the security situation was relatively calm. At the time, we believed that the war would end soon, especially since the IOF had already invaded most areas of the Gaza Strip, some of which were invaded several times, including northern Gaza, which was invaded twice. Other areas had not been invaded and were destroyed by airstrikes. On 5 October 2024, we were surprised when IOF warplanes pounded northern Gaza with heavy bombardment, with artillery shells falling everywhere and quadcopters hovering overhead, firing indiscriminately at various areas in northern Gaza. This was accompanied by the IOF dropping leaflets over our residential area, ordering all residents of northern Gaza to evacuate their homes, claiming the area was a dangerous combat zone. All the residents of the Abu Nasser building. See, this is like, oh, but we warned them, right? We destroyed their lives, but we warned them. We sent a leaflet. Sorry, I'm mad. All the residents of the Abu Nasser building obeyed the IOF's orders, but as we tried to leave the building, the artillery and quadcopter fire intensified, targeting anything moving in the streets. Bullets felt like rain on anyone who moved. The situation was completely different from the previous ones, as the IOF military vehicles had all the northern areas of Gaza under control and blocked all the entrances and exits from the first moments of their invasion. Therefore, we decided to return to the building, as the way out was fraught with danger and death, especially as many families who tried to evacuate their homes were shot by the IOF and their bodies were thrown in the streets. See, when we say that there are kill zones in Gaza, we do not understand the gravity of that statement until we listen to a Palestinian say there were people trying to flee and they were shot trying to flee because they entered a kill zone. We remained trapped in northern Gaza Strip from 5 October 2024 until 29 October 2024. During this time, the humanitarian situation worsened and became more difficult as we lacked even the basic necessities of life due to severe shortages of food, water, and medicine. By mid-October 2024, we were running out of water, and each of the 5 of us would share a cup of water. As for food, a loaf of bread was also shared among more than 5 people. On 24 October 2024, the IOF sent a quadcopter that played a recording throughout its loudspeaker, calling all the displaced people in Al Fakura school, which is about 50 meters away from us. Calling all the displaced people. We gathered all the people in our building, about 200 people, and tried to leave towards Al Fakura school to join the displaced people. However, the IOF opened indiscriminate fire at us, and the quadcopter called on us to go back and not to approach the area. We obeyed the orders and returned to the building. So they told them to go somewhere, and then they shot them for going. At approximately 21:30 on 28 October 2024, the Oda family building, which was adjacent to our building on the south side, was bombed above its residents. Scattered shrapnel killed Lion Hussam Nabil Abu Nasser, 12, Yassin Hussam Nabil Abu Nasser, 6, Suha Adnan Abu Nasser, 37, and Ahmed Mohammed Abu Nasser, 3 months and 3 months, man. Like, it's like 12 years old, 6 years old, 3 months old. Like, this is a slaughterhouse. And injured Suha Shakwi Isa Abu Nasser and Heba Shakwi Isa Abu Nasser, both of whom were seriously injured after shrapnel entered their heads. Unfortunately, we were unable to treat them or evacuate their bodies, which we left in the apartment until sunrise to see what we could do. We did our best to give first aid to the injured. Tired, I went to sleep, and as did most of the people in the building. I remember that my family and I were in the east room of the apartment. At about 4 in the morning, 29 October 2024, I felt as if I had been thrown into a fireball or as if I were in a hot oven, as debris rained down on me while I was lying on the sofa. Suddenly, dust filled the area and I could see nothing but pitch black. After a few moments, I tried to get up, not knowing what was happening, but my head hit the ceiling and I fell to the floor. It was then that I realized that our house had been targeted and completely destroyed above our heads. Like, I don't know if you live in an area where there are earthquakes, but if you have ever been woken up by an earthquake, I'm Peruvian. Like, I don't get scared with earthquakes. Like, I mean, Well, I mean, a lot of Peruvians get scared with earthquakes, but like I'm one of the ones that don't. I don't care about earthquakes. I'm fine. But when they wake you up in the middle of the night, there's a good like 20, 30 seconds where you don't know what's going on. You don't understand why the house is moving, and your mind goes to the craziest scenarios, right? Um, and but then you realize it's just an earthquake. I need to like go stand under a door or whatever, and that's it. This person was woken up by a freaking missile bombing his house on fire. The ground floor had fallen about 2 meters, and the upper floors had certainly collapsed on top of it. Surviving this crime with those who were in the same room with me was a divine miracle. Uh, Minutes after the massacre, I heard the voice of my wife, Ayat Shadi Samir Abu Nasser, screaming and calling me to help her and my mother, Layla Nasser Kamis Abu Nasser. I quickly removed the stones from their bodies and they began to regain consciousness. I, along with other survivors from the ground, began to rescue the injured through a small hole created by the bombing on the northeastern side of the ground floor. Through this hole, our only exit from the building, about 15 survivors and injured people and I managed to get out. After rescuing my injured family members, I rushed to the street to help the wounded and transport the martyrs. The scene was unimaginable. Bodies were strewn everywhere. Body parts were found around the flattened building, in its vicinity, or in the roofs of nearby houses, like a scene from a horror film. Most of the bodies were torn to pieces. Guys, this is difficult to read, okay? Bear with me. We recovered about 120 bodies over the course of 2 days after the massacre. I will never forget the horrific and painful scenes of searching for the bodies, most of which were children and women torn into charred pieces, some with only half a body. I remember that when we tried to recover the bodies from the rubble, some of them were trapped under the rubble, and we had to cut off parts of them in order to get them out. I also remember that while we were searching for the bodies and the injured, we heard the voices of some family members who were still alive. Trapped under the rubble, we could hear them screaming from under the rubble, "Save us, save us." We tried so hard throughout the day to trace their voices and locate them, but to no avail. They remained under the rubble and had not been rescued. This is monstrous. Can you imagine? Can you truly imagine? You have friends and family trapped under the rubble, screaming for you to help them. People you know, and you can't even find their voice, and there's no one to call. There's no one to call. These people need to be stopped. I gotta see how long this one is because I need to talk about the other thing as well. This one's shorter. This one is shorter, right? No, it's not. Yeah, it is. So, Hadil Yusuf Isa Al Dadu, 24, from Saitun neighborhood in Gaza City, told PCHR how her home was targeted and how she was later arrested, separated from her children, and tortured. Oh my god! Like, it's just one story after another, man. On 8 October 2023, we heard our neighbors shouting in the street that IOF was going to bomb our neighbor's house. The residents of, as one does, right? Imagine one day I get a freaking text on my phone that says that they're gonna bomb the building next door. You need to run and warn everyone that you're gonna die. Everything that you own is gonna go up in flames in the next 15 minutes. The residents of the nearby houses evacuated and ran in the streets to stay as far away as possible from the house that had been warned to be bombed. And again, this is what they say is the humanitarian thing to do, right? Immediately, my husband and I took our children downstairs to my brother-in-law's house to shelter from the bombing and stay in a relatively safe place. I just think of all the people that complain about, like, oh, we had to go to the bomb shelter in Tel Aviv, and like, and then the missile was shot by the Iron Dome. While this is happening a few miles down. The house was then bombed, which strongly shook our house. Unfortunately, none of us were injured. For 4 days after the war broke out, I stayed in my apartment on the fourth floor and witnessed all the bombings and shelling that hit the Shujaiya neighborhood. We were very frightened by the heavy shelling, and my children were screaming with fear. The bombing and shelling intensified dramatically and came closer to our house. We were scared to death and nervous all the time. All I did was sit and hug my children, who were screaming with fear. At about 7 a.m. On 16 October 2023, my children and I were in our apartment looking out the window. I was holding my 9-month-old baby in my hands. I'm I cannot explain to you just how sensitive I am to these stories about like I know it's all awful, okay? It doesn't matter if the person is 24, a man or a woman or 78, but when you tell me I was holding my 9-month-old baby, I, I I get a knot in my throat. While my other child was next to me, when suddenly the IOF fired a missile at our house. Of course they did, severely damaging half of it. Thank God I was not in the other part of the house, but the intensity of the bombardment pushed me inside as if a ball of fire had exploded in my face and knocked me to the ground. I thought my children were dead as. Oh my God. I thought my children were dead. A shattered glass flew over our heads. Small pieces of glass were stuck in my hands and feet after the windows were shattered and the security bars and frames of the window were blown out. I carried my children and ran down to the ground floor in fear, looking for my husband. I went down barefoot with my 4-year-old, and the stairs were full of debris and glass. I found my brother-in-law badly injured in the abdomen with oh my God, with his organs protruding from his body, while his wife, who was 9 months oh my God, who was 9 months pregnant and in her bedroom, had shrapnel wounds in her back, face, and waist. She was covered in blood and said, "I can't feel my body." My mother-in-law was also injured in the head by flying glass. I cannot describe how difficult the situation was and the palpable fear that gripped us. My children were screaming loudly, and I was crying and shaking with fear. I screamed and looked for my husband, who I later found also wounded, with a hairline fracture in his hand. After our house was bombed, we evacuated with my aunt-in-law's house in Al Shama area in the old city of Gaza, where we stayed for 20 days. When the IO threatened a house next to ours, forcing us to evacuate again, we went to my father's house, which is a few meters away from my house in the Al Saitoum neighborhood, but it was overcrowded with displaced people. I stayed there until the day before the ceasefire was announced on 23 November 2023, when we decided to return to our house. We stayed on the ground floor with my in-laws, who also returned to their house after the ceasefire. At the time, the IOF was stationed in Tel Al-Hawa, near the Oman Ibn Al-As Mosque, and we received text messages calling for evacuation, which had been going on since the first day of the war on Gaza. Well, there's more. Like, as you can see, there is more, more, more. There's a bunch of stories like this, and I can't read them all. I am physically incapable of reading more of this. But anyway, see, I think it is very, very important to stop treating the tale of this monstrosity in numbers, like X amount of people died, in framed from the perspective of the genocidaire, like, oh, Israel bombed this neighborhood, oh, Israel issued an evacuation order here, oh, Israel is targeting journalists, oh, Israel, because this is a very like we are incapable of understanding just how much this is affecting everyday people until we see that it's not just that the IDF decided to bomb this neighborhood or decided to evacuate this neighborhood. No, that affected real people that have day in and day out gone through horrific, awful things that I would never even be able to dream. Like, I've experienced death closely, like, as in I've lost family members of old age, right, or of disease. It's horrible. I cannot imagine going down a burning building and seeing, what was it, brother-in-law, her brother-in-law, right? Brother-in-law, my brother-in-law, with his guts spilled out in the floor, bleeding out, and my sister with shrapnel wounds in her back, and I don't know, my brother with like glass in the arm, right? Or like, or I don't know, man. Like, I cannot imagine going through that. And yet, when you weave the stories, not from the perspective of the perpetrator, but from the perspective of the victim, you see just how even more monstrous it is. It is already monstrous when you see it through the eyes of the perpetrator, through the eyes of the genocidaire. When you see it through the eyes of the people that are going through this horrible massacre, through this brutal onslaught, this like butcher's house of Palestinians, you see the reality of this as something that can only be described as a genocide. At least I think so. So let me catch up with the chat because I see a lot happening. I need the minute before we start talking about the freaking Gaza Riviera. I need a minute. Mayra says, as horrible as they are, these accounts are actually deeply humanizing since those images were exposed to every day. Those images we were exposed to every day seem to be so desensitizing. We see 1 second of these people's worst moments on social media. What they've been enduring is way more unthinkable than the videos of the specific moments of the bombings and hospitals. This is true, and maybe this is the hopeful thing to end this section with. It is important to see these people as like these victims of genocide as more than just snippets of tragedy in our screens. Like, oh, look, the people that got shot. Oh, look, the people that are fleeing. Oh, look, the people who are miserable. These people are not snippets. These people are not random images that popped into our brains so that we are sensitized about genocide and we go out in the street and say, Free Palestine. These people are stories. These people are universes on their own right. And they have a right. They have a freaking right to tell their stories. They have a freaking right to tell us what happened to them, because what's happening to them is so monstrous and so inhumane that they have every right to tell their stories. And it is so valuable that this report, I'm actually going to share the link with you guys in the chat. So valuable that this report has done this, because it is truly an unforgivable crime. It is an unforgivable. I don't think I will ever forgive this. Yeah, okay, so please read this report, read the stories, and also you know, spread the word. These reports take an enormous amount of time to research and write, and yet no one really reads them. It's very few people that do. So hopefully by reading it out loud here and sharing it here, more people will. It is important to learn the stories of the people who are being genocided right now. It's important to stand with them. Okay, this was a horrible thing to do.